We've got a really great presentation for you all today with Aaron Esser with Washington State University. He's a great speaker and he's got some really good information on conservation tillage and herbicide resistant weeds. Before we get started, is anyone here in person for pesticide credits? Okay. So you need to fill these out. I will hand it to the back. Please fill it out clearly because I have to send this to Washington, and if I can't read your name or numbers.
And don't leave it early.
Yes. You might not get credit.
Yes,
Yeah. The second thing for anyone on Zoom who wishes to get pesticide credits, you need to enter your name and license number right now in the chat. And then because there's a mid-session check-in requirement, so you have to stay the whole time. We're gonna pause mid-session and give those Zoom people a chance to check in so they can prove they were here for the pesticide credits. Sound good? Okay, well then I will not take up any more of your time. I will let Aaron fill you in on some cool information. So thank you.
All right. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I'm Aaron Esser with Washington State University, and I'm going to be talking integrated weed control for soil conservation. Just a little quick introduction on myself. I grew up on a family farm in Genesee, Idaho, so that's just located right here on the state line. I went to the University of Idaho.
Sorry, the PowerPoint on Zoom is not sharing correctly. So let me.
Sorry,
technical difficulties. You know how it is. We do our best, but sometimes. There we go. Go quick. Share it, and then we go like this. Now is it working?
we're still seeing.
Oh,
there we go. It's going.
Amazing.
All right.
See the slide we're looking at.
All right,
Yeah.
we're
Thank
good.
you.
So, I graduated from University of Idaho. My background is in agricultural economics, and then I got my master's in plant science. So I really like where I call it the money meets the road or money meets the field. I've been with Washington State University now for 26 years. It just means I'm old all of a sudden. I started off doing a lot of on-farm testing, working with growers on conservation tillage, a lot of no-till farming back then, looking at it large scale with producers. I moved or shifted gears a little bit, worked a lot with wireworms and wireworm research. One of the reasons I got into the wireworm stuff, not because I like entomology, I actually don't like entomology at all, hope I don't offend anyone by that, but they're just a bug, I just want to switch them and move on. But it was seen as a barrier to conservation tillage because of the residue and things like that, and the tillage taking care of the worms. So I had to come up with a way to help with solve the worms, the wireworm issue, if I wanted to keep farmers doing conservation tillage and moving that forward. Today, I'm spending a lot of time on the Washington State Soil Health Initiative and the Pacific Northwest Herbicide Resistance Initiative. And those two, I think, are very closely linked, and that's what I'm going to be focused on a lot today. I really have a goal today, is just to understand that herbicide-resistant weeds are the greatest threat we have to conservation tillage in our wheat-based cropping systems in not only Eastern Washington, but really across the nation. Understand that there is absolute hope with the advancement, though, with the research, technology, and grower innovation. I don't think there's anything here that we can't overcome to help continue with conservation tillage moving forward. And one of the things I do encourage, I have a lot of different stuff in here. We don't have to wait till the end for questions or comments or discussion. If I'm showing something and you want to discuss it a little bit more, that's great. We can bring it in during the presentation. I'm trapped up here a little bit. I'm gonna shift over here. And when I put this presentation together, I'm pulling from about 4 different presentations that I've given on various subjects like this to bring it together. Farmers have implemented conservation tillage across the nation, Eastern Washington as well, at unprecedented rates over the last 25 plus years. And society has greatly benefited. We've benefited, each and every one of us in society has benefited from cleaner air, cleaner water, stored carbon, and reduced emissions. What is the one primary technology that has allowed this conservation movement to take place? That's a question. Any answers on that? What's the one? What?
Herbicides.
Herbicides. Roundup. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Roundup ready, but yes, Roundup in general has allowed conservation farming to take off like nothing we've seen here in not only Eastern Washington, but across the United States. So I broke it into a couple different series. I'm gonna start off talking about a little bit of the background behind this. Okay. When I look at our wheat-based system, the amount of herbicide-resistant weeds we have out there today, it's not getting any smaller. It just keeps, this list just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And weeds are actually becoming resistant to not maybe one chemical, but maybe 2 chemicals or 3 chemicals, or in some instances, 4 chemicals. Across our system, we have Russian thistle, sparrow, rye, prickly lettuce, downy brown, jointed goatgrass, mayweed, chamomile, kochia, blitzweed, tumble mustard, Italian ryegrass, Canadian thistle, and common lamb's quarter right now. That are resistant to 1 or 2 or maybe even as many as 3 different modes of action of herbicides. I'm not going to get into some of my presentations. I get into the weeds a lot more. I'm going to try to stay out of the weeds on this. I know, but there's a source, PNW 437, has this chart on it, guide for herbicide rotations in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm going to spend some time just talking groups. I don't like talking a lot of chemical names, Roundup or anything else. I know Roundup is 9, as group 9. And we have the group 1 ACCase inhibitors, and we have the group 2s, the ALS. Here, Roundup sits right here. And when you look at herbicide and herbicide rotation, just like we rotate crops, to avoid selecting for herbicide resistance, do not use herbicides from the same color group more than once within 3 years, is what we recommend. If I'm in a winter wheat summer fallow area, like is what we practice in our region, we go summer fallow, winter wheat. That's only 2 years. And we go summer fallow, group 2, summer fallow, group 2, summer fallow, group 2, summer fallow, group 2. So you get the point. Even if you're in a 3-year rotation or something, it's very difficult once in a while to find something that will pair up to control the weed you're looking for. And it's important to rotate to a different group every year of the production system if you get a choice. And sometimes farmers feel like they get pigeonholed into doing a certain thing and there's no way out of that cycle. If you go to the higher rainfall parts of Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho, this is Italian ryegrass. And I have farmers, actually had a farmer from Genesee, Idaho goes, "You work a lot with weeds." He goes, "I had Italian ryegrass and I don't know what to do with it. What would you do with it?" "I don't have Italian ryegrass in my area." I said, "Well, just sell your farm in Genesee and move to Davenport, Washington. We don't get enough rain." Sometimes it's nice to be on the drier side of things because so far we don't have enough moisture yet for Italian ryegrass until it adapts. But it is very adaptable. It's widespread group 1, the ACCase inhibitors, the group 2 herbicides, the ALS, and documented group 9, which is glyphosate or Roundup, and group 15 resistance. This is a poster child for herbicide resistant weed. And then we got the one we have in our country, and that's downy brown. It's widespread resistance to group 2 herbicides, and there's documented group 9 resistance with this, which again is glyphosate. And when I look at farming and the biggest threat we have to farms today, it's these weeds. And trying to figure out how we're going to put a system in place that's gonna keep the farmers economically viable, yet keep these things in check. Oh, it did work. Okay. So when I look at where we're at in our region, we truly are at a crossroads. The changes I've done, or the work I've done over the last 26 years, and what I've seen, and what's gonna happen over the next 10 years of my career are dramatically different. Do we simply replace those group 2 herbicides with group 1 and go about our day? When I talk about down and brome in our country, we're using a lot of the group 2 herbicides that are no longer effective. And there's a new technology out called coaxium wheat, and growers are shifting to coaxium wheat, which uses a group 1 herbicide. So they're just making a switch. And I'm not big on quotes, but this one by Albert Einstein just jumps out at me. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And when I look at what growers are doing by going group 2 to group 1, are they really making a change? Are they really doing anything different? No, they're just grabbing a different jug, putting a different seed in the drill. They're not really making a change for the long term. This is a picture WSU weed scientist Drew Lyon put up on, I guess it's X. He put it up on X. And he says, the spring canola study near Pullman, Washington is infested with Italian ryegrass and common lambscourt. It was just sprayed with various combinations of glyphosate and glufosinate. So they're looking at Roundup Ready canola and glufosinate or Libby-Link canola here for controlling Italian ryegrass. Some of the plots received Sarlin pre, and he asked a question of people on X, can you tell where they put the Sarlin down? Can we figure out where they put the Sarlin down? This pre-herbicide? You know, I can look at that and tell you your plot design. So you can clearly see where the Sarlin went down. Stop doing that. The first comment that came up, it probably was in like 15 seconds after he posted that on X, was this farmer, Corey. Be nice if it didn't need to be incorporated. He's a no-till farmer from South Idaho. With Solomon, because it has to be pre-plant incorporated into the soil, which is tillage. He doesn't like tillage. And he wants something that will work, but not require tillage for incorporation. It's kind of a conflict. And Drew, of course, agreed, but he says the drawback is he doesn't want to see glyphosate-resistant Italian ryegrass. That would not be good. And think it's another if we rely solely on glyphosate. So trying to figure out ways to get more activity on the ground that fits within our systems. This is a piece from the Washington Department of Ag, their soil health, soil management in Washington. They did a survey. And when you go through, look at the baseline management challenges, asking growers what their challenges are, you know, there's a big cluster of stuff: acidification, surface crusting, compaction, soil-borne disease, moisture retention, erosion, and what's by far the greatest? Weed pressure. Because this is putting a big pressure on soil management. So I want to talk a little bit about the integrated weed control. And when I talk with growers about integrated weed control, first of all, I love using the term with them because I like watching their eyes roll back to their head. Oh, God, yeah, guy talking integrated weed control. I've heard it before. And I get it, but it really is about understanding the biggest limitation within each field and developing a plan to control it using all tools. Mechanical, cultural, chemical, and biological. I actually have some projects focused on biological weed control that I'm not gonna talk about today, but we are looking at it. And I always get it because I talk about using a little bit of tillage in the system. And there's always that grower, maybe towards the back of the room. Weeds have never become resistant to iron. And they joke about it, slap the table, and good one, Bobby. This is a field in Lynn, Washington, in the background. It got sprayed with the group 2 herbicide in the fall, and then with the group 2 herbicide again in the spring. Downy brome is doing just fine, right? We can all agree, Downy brome is doing just fine in this particular field. It has seen a heck of a lot of tillage over the last 110 years. Downy brome is doing just fine. So just because you till or you don't till, doesn't mean you're immune to the problem. It's not about the tillage system you're using, but around the management that you have around the system you use. It gets you into situations like this. In this case, he could really use a little bit of cultural control to help with this downy brome. One of the pieces I work with WSU is I manage a research facility in Davenport, Washington. Does everyone know where Davenport's at? Kind of, yeah, it's almost like the center of the state. It sure feels like it once in a while. It's a 320 acre facility. It's in the intermediate precipitation zone. We get about 13 inches of precip a year, 13 to 14. We're on the lower end of that. This Wilkie Farm project was established in 1998, and it uses a direct seed system with diversified crops. It was put together by a group of growers a long, long time ago, and it was outlined back in 98 as what would be happening. And when I look at it, direct seed is the first step to keeping the soil in place and nearly eliminating wind and water. I said nearly, it doesn't eliminate it, but it does reduce wind and water erosion. And when you look at soil quality, I don't care what type of bugs you're putting on the ground, what type of microbial activity or anything else, if that soil's leaving, that's not doing the soil health any good. So the first point of soil health in my mind is you gotta keep it in place. And that's, I think, what direct seeding has allowed these growers to do, is really help keep that soil in place. And when I look at the farm, you know, we've used a lot of different equipment over the years to seed this farm. Growers coming in and seed it. We use red equipment. I see red tractors, green tractor. Is there a green tractor there? Oh yeah, there's a green tractor. We have red tractors, green tractors, yellow tractors, red drills. That's a gray drill, red drill, yellow drill, green drill. We have all types of tools. So it's not tool dependent either to get this done. And today, we have this. We upgraded. Or a farmer gave us a John Deere 750 no-till drill that we modified. So we don't have to rely on a custom applicator or custom seeders coming to seed the farm. And this does everything. We have all the variable rate here, so we variable rate all of our fertilizer and stuff across yield zones as well, and it's a lower disturbance drill. So that brings us to this piece of it. The long-term agroecological research and extension program. You gotta love these acronyms. LTAR. So the WSU Wilkie Farm was brought into this LTAR program, I think back in 2021. This was funded by the state Washington Soil Health Initiative. And there's, you can see the different LTAR locations. There are Wilkies with wheat, Wenatchee with orchards, Prosser vineyards, Othello has potatoes, Puyallup has the small farms, and then Mount Vernon has the some of the berry production and stuff. So we have all these different sites across the area. We're collecting various pieces of information regarding soil health. And we all have our own programs set up to look at and do things associated with enhancing soil health. When you look at the farm, the Wilkie Farm, here's Highway 2. Here's Davenport, Washington, so it truly is at the edge of Davenport. It is farming in a bubble because I got all the farmers driving by, and if they see stuff, they're always calling me going, "What are you doing? What the heck's going on? How come your wheat looks like garbage? How come this happened? Boy, you sort of got hit with frost, didn't you? How cold did it get there? Because we had like canola." So they're always keeping track of what we're doing on the farm just by driving by. Sometimes I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but it is what it is. So when you look at the farm, we have it broken into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 fields. 3 of these fields are in the traditional 3 rotation, what farmers have used in that area for a long, long, long time. No-till fallow, winter wheat, and the spring cereal. Pretty traditional. Then we broke it into a 4-year rotation, trying to improve the diversity and lengthen rotation and reduce a little bit of that summer fallow. So we go no-till fallow, winter wheat, broadleaf crop, and then it used to be spring wheat, but a couple years ago we made a change and we dropped the spring wheat and we go winter wheat following the broadleaf crop. And then our continuous rotation. Traditionally, we're trying to keep it into a broadleaf crop, and then we go winter wheat, and then we go spring cereal. And I don't specify spring cereal, that could be barley, it could be spring wheat. Right now, it's a food grade barley that we have. The broadleaf crop, it just says broadleaf crop. We don't specify what broadleaf crop it is. We're looking at options. We're looking at chickpeas. We're looking at spring peas. We're looking at canola. And this year we have canola in one of them, and we have mustard, yellow mustard in the other one. Whichever one will give us the best opportunity to make money and fix the problems that we have or minimize them. So we have those going across the farm. Each of these, you can see the acreage. This is 29 acres, 27 acres, 27 acres. We have research plots throughout the farm. Here's a 10-acre compost study that Ian Burke has, a different study, all the random studies throughout. This is a 15-acre weed science playpen. When we took over the management of the farm in the first place, my first goal was to ensure that the weed scientists had no place to work on the farm, because I just don't like weeds. So I did get set aside 15 acres that we manage very poorly, so they have their population of weeds. And once again, if you have any questions about this, please just jump in and get it answered. Oh, I'm gonna back up a little bit here. This one, winter wheat, I have targeted tillage in here. We will use that once in a while. We come in after the winter wheat crop, we'll mow it at 12 degrees, GPS, we mow it at 12 degrees, and then we'll use a skew treader or light disc that we adjusted to where it runs almost straight, and we're running at minus 12 degrees. To take some of this residue, get it incorporated so it breaks down a little bit more to make it easier to see the broadleaf crop into, and also to try to figure out how to germinate some of those weeds. Weeds will not germinate if they're set in a duct layer. They need to be in soil, in contact with the soil. So we're trying to figure out ways to get in contact with the soil. And that's why I bring up the mechanical piece of this. The tillage or the mechanical piece of it. Remember I talked about integrated weed control, there's that mechanical aspect of it. And targeted tillage, why would a grower want to use targeted tillage? Besides the obvious, which I just stated, weeds. Another reason they want to use targeted tillage, residue management would be the primary two, I would think. If I'm looking at a system, why I would try to use targeted tillage? Does that mean I'm out there with the moldboard plow, ripping and burying everything? No. Is that one of the studies I wouldn't mind trying? Yes. I would love to do a study where I put a moldboard, the rollers on the plow, roll it across the piece of ground, bury it, and then no-till it. Take all my weed seeds, all my soil pH problems, and everything else, organic matter, roll it, bury it, and start over. Hey, but that's a long study to do, and I haven't figured out how to do it. But it's not out of the realm, as long as you're doing it for a specific reason. You can manage the other stuff. So now I'm gonna focus a little bit on what we're doing, move away from some of the background and talk about some of the research. And I'm gonna focus not as much on the research side of it, but what my outreach focus has been. Once again, I'm trying to keep you guys out of the weeds a little bit. So the one thing I want growers to have is a plan in place. This is the Wilkie farm. I showed you the picture of what the map looks like. This is what it looks like herbicide wise that we've done on the farm since 2006. And I can't quite see the color coordination extremely well on this, but when I go and look at it, this one, 2011 on field 3, we had barley. Or back in 2011, yeah, we had barley in field 3, 9, we used 9. That is what? Roundup. That was a pre-plant burn down, and then we used 6,4, which was Brock's M for our weed control. That's it. So I can go back to this, you know, right here, summer fallow, 9,14. So we put a sharpen in the tank with our Roundup, and then we use 9,9, and we finish off with 22. That was a carboxylate application or paraquat. So on this one no-till fallow application, we got 3 different modes of action on the ground. Most farmers traditionally only use 1. So we're trying to do, it's a little bit different for me to stand in front of a group of growers and say, you guys need to do this. This is what you guys need to do. But I also have to do it then on my farm. A show and tell. It doesn't do me a good to tell them if I'm not doing what, practice what you preach. And I can go back to this one page, and I actually have a lot of growers who implemented this and stuff, a very similar system. Where you can go back and look at what you're using. So when I go, even long before I walk into a field to look at what type of weed control I need to be doing, or what else, I'm looking here, what have I done the last 3 or 4 years? 627, 627, 6. Okay, that's not gonna get a 6 this year. It's just not. I gotta figure out a different way to get away from the 6s. We're 627. I like the product Husky. So as a creature of habit, which all farmers are creatures of habit, when they find that one that works, they like it and they use it. But when you go through, like, one of the reasons I talked about on my canola, where's one of my canola ones? I wish the color came through a little bit better. Canola, right here, 9, so I used Roundup burn down, and then I used 1, and then I came in with a group 10, which is Liberty. So I'm using Liberty Link canola. Growers ask me why I'm using Liberty Link canola and not Roundup Ready canola. Do you know why I might not want to use Roundup Ready canola on this farm? Why would I not want to use Roundup Ready canola? Okay. 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. We use a lot of glyphosate in our system. So why do I want to use a crop that uses glyphosate? There's no other opportunity we have in our cropping system to get a group 10 on the ground. So that's why I prefer to use Liberty Link canola over a glyphosate resistant canola. So I use this chart, and this is what I want all growers to have as a plan in place. Because what you've done in the past is why you have what you have today. It's not from a neighbor, it's not from magic or anything else, it's your management. So what are you doing in your management to have the problems that you're having today? And then more importantly is, you have what you have, what are you gonna do differently? What's one thing you can do differently? What's the second thing you can do differently in your plan to assure you're not gonna have those problems moving forward? I didn't do that one. Okay. This one, it starts with the seed. With all these weeds, it starts with the seed and the seed bank. In research conducted in Oregon, Downy brome will produce between 140 and 1,300 seeds per plant. On average, it's 425 seeds. Under ideal environmental conditions, Downy brome can produce over 500 pounds of seed per acre. We don't even come close to seeding our winter wheat that heavy. A heavy seeding rate is about 120 pounds an acre. Yet, if you have a heavy Downy brome infestation, you're putting out 125 million plants or seeds per acre with potential for it. It's a numbers game that's gonna win. That's why I keep the dice up here. I talk a lot about numbers games. Most Downy brome seed remains viable for 2 to 3 years. And some farmers will dispute that, and 3 years is pretty short. But on general, it's in the ground for 2 to 3 years. So what are you doing? It's a shorter seed life, and what can you do to push it along and limit seed and get that seed out of your soil? I'm coming back to this one. The facts are, when you look at this trial, and Drew will get up here and present the results to the Canola Commission of Wheat Growers, and on this trial, and he's gonna say, with that Roundup application or glufosinate application, we got 95 to 99% control of our Italian ryegrass. He does a beautiful job on Italian ryegrass. On this one, he's gonna say Sonolin, which is a group 3 herbicide, and Roundup, group 9, provided 95 to 99% control. So as you're a grower sitting out there, what are you thinking?
Just use Roundup.
Just use Roundup. It's easy. Why am I going through the tillage process, spending money on Sonolin, when I can get the same control with just using glyphosate and continue doing what I'm doing? So why? It's a numbers game. It's 100% a numbers game. If you're putting Roundup on this piece of property here, this one, versus this one, which one do you have the potential for developing resistance greater on? Right here. I'm not worried about spraying Roundup on this piece of ground and developing herbicide resistance. I am on this one though, because it's a numbers game. If 1 in 3 million are resistant, you got a lot to go before you find that 1 in 3 million. Here, not so much. I talk about going to Vegas with these people. This person, I'll go to Vegas with this dude, or this person. We're gonna win some money. And we're gonna eat well in Vegas. This poor sap here, we may win a hand early on and be like high rollers, but we're gonna end up stuck in the gutter, throwing up on our shoes. And can't figure out how to get home with this poor sap. He's not gonna do too well in Vegas. He's not gonna do too well in the numbers game, long term. This is one of the big things I've been working on is using residual herbicide applications in fallow. Something besides just using glyphosate. Especially for Downy brome. We're trying to reduce the winter annual grassy weed pressure over time and preserve what's left of those group 2s and group 1 grassy weed herbicides. I want to enhance the broadleaf weed control in our summer fallow system, especially on tough controlled weed species. The prickly lettuce, the mare's tail are very difficult in a summer fallow system to keep it clean. So what can we do to get rid of those as well and not rely so much on Roundup and reduce that reliance on Roundup? The treatments, we're looking at some different things. We're using Valor and Atrazine. We're using Fierce. We're using Metribuzin, not just Metribuzin, but Metribuzin at a very high rate, 13 ounces instead of 3 ounces. And then trying Anthem Flex. Growers in my area are still trying to figure out how to get Anthem Flex worked into the rotation and put less pressure on those group 2 herbicides. All these are designed to help reduce downy brome populations, as well as some of those broadleaf weeds. This is what the check looks like. This is what we did not put them on in the spring of the year, and this grower is getting ready to spray this field for the first time. And that's what the field looks like in the check. Where we use the Fierce, this is what it looks like. Where we use the Valor with atrazine, this is what it looks like. And you can see the checks right here. And then we have the Metribuzin. And this is what it looks like when he's getting ready to spray that field for the first time. So my question again is why? Why would a grower want to spend the time, energy, and efforts to do this versus this? This is single group of herbicide, the group 9. Down here, we're getting 2 different modes of action on the ground. We're using a group 9 as well, but also a group 5. And once again, it comes down to the dice. Which of these 2 do you want to go to Vegas with? The one who's going to win some money and you're going to eat well? Or the one who's going to be stuck in the gutter? Can't find his way home. When you're spraying Roundup on this, and if 1 in 3 million, once again, is resistant, 1 in 3 million plants or 1 in 4 million, very difficult to find in this scenario. Not near as difficult to find in this scenario. So just keeping the numbers down when you're putting the herbicides on. Yeah.
Sorry, I have to do the State Department of Agricultural virtual check-in for anyone that wants virtual pesticide credits. You have to enter your license number, first name, middle initial, and last name. So thank you very much. Sorry for the interruption.
And they have to answer why.
And they have to answer why.
And this is the field in my presentation I like to come back to because a lot of growers, this is pretty common and pretty easy to find. And there's one of the chemical reps sits up in front of groups of farmers, and he'll tell you with this coaxium wheat, 1 in a million downy brome plants are resistant. Already, they're naturally resistant. So 1 in a million are naturally resistant to aggressor herbicide. When I look at this draw bottom and what type of population we have, I know it's a lot more, it's pretty high. It's a lot more than what we see in our weed act. So I work a lot with farmers in scenarios. And this is the one Chad would probably like a farmer to do. Scenario 1, you go summer fallow, coaxium wheat, summer fallow, coaxium wheat, and you go summer fallow, and you get out of coaxium wheat. Go to something else. That's what he's gonna tell you. But hit it with coaxium, get the population down, and then come back with something else. And this is my scenario, what I would like a farmer to do. Summer fallow, spring wheat, summer fallow, then coaxium wheat. Putting the spring wheat in there to help reduce the downy brome population. And farmers are gonna tell me, Aaron, we don't make as much money off spring wheat as we do winter wheat. Duh. Why do you keep talking spring wheat? And it comes down to a numbers game. This one, your coaxium is going on a draw bottom like this. There's 3 million plants out there on a per acre basis. So if you're putting coaxium wheat on that scenario, or in this scenario, your first application of coaxium wheat may be going on 300,000 downy brome plants. By putting spring wheat in, you can reduce the population and that. Now, when you look at the longevity of keeping this tool around, which one do you like better? This one. This is short-term profitability and efficiency. Over here, he's going to make more money in this scenario in the short term than using this scenario. This is long-term viability and profitability though. So looking more long-term. And then what happens if this guy, if you come in and put Metrobus in here? All of a sudden, 300,000 might become 30,000. Put Anthem Flex on there. All of a sudden, it may be 3,000. And that helps preserve and keeps that group 1 herbicide viable into the future. And no one says this farmer can't use these, and he should use these to help get that number down. But still, your first application is going on a pretty high dense population, and you're starting that selection process early. I don't like that selection process started early. And right here, no one said you can't use a little mechanical to come in and help germinate the seeds, push the seed bank, and get rid of them before you even seed. I'm not saying we have to do destructive tillage or anything else, but something that's going to stir the surface and stimulate weed seed growth. Now this one brings me to the weed applications. Is anyone here not familiar with the weed? Raise your hand if you're not familiar with the weed. Okay, it runs a light beam across the ground from these sensors, and it sees green. If it sees green, it sprays. So if it sees the weed, goes across the ground. If it sees the weed, it sprays the weed. And that's it. It'll just run across the ground. We're not inventing anything anymore. Anyone find a battery? So as it runs across the ground, if it sees a weed, it sprays the weed. Which you instantly want to say, geez, why isn't everyone using that? Sounds like a great technology, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Why might a farmer want to use something like this?
Very expensive.
Yeah. We can add it up. 1,200, another 1,200, another 1,200, another 1,200, another 1,200. You know, so they're a little over about $1,500 a foot. So if you're running a 100-foot weeded sprayer, it's easily $150,000 for the technology side of things, not the sprayer. So it is expensive, but we're running a lot of them in my country. Why? For weeds, and believe it or not, farmers don't like to apply pesticides if they don't have to. If they can do anything they can to apply less, that's a benefit to them. I like it. I focus on late to mid-season fallow management and post-harvest weed control. I use glyphosate mid-season, and then I use paraquat concentrate late season and post-harvest, because now I can effectively do it economically. This goes through field 3 at the Wilkie Farm last year. We started off with Valor, applied in the fall. $9.38. We came in with Roundup application on May 3rd, cost $10. Came back on June 26th with the weed sprayer. We applied on average 14 ounces across the field, cost $2.64. Here we came on July 20th, sprayed it again. Used 6 ounces of Roundup across the whole field, cost $1.24. And then we finished it right before we seeded. We put paraquat on there. So when I look at my fallow, we got 3 different modes of action on that summer fallow. So the potential for developing a Roundup resistant weed is significantly less than if we're just using Roundup. So my total fallow cost is $25.41. And I get the back, I didn't get the back percent. So just quickly looking at it, my broadcast rate would have been 50 or 42 ounces an acre. That's what I had it set up to do. So if I would have sprayed the whole field, it would have been 42 ounces of Roundup. We put on 14, $2.64. 43 ounces is what the broadcast rate would have been, or 44, we only put on 3.8. So we're 67% less, 86% less, and 91% less. We only sprayed 9% of this field with that technology. Instant becomes a quicker and easier that I can actually use a multiple modes of action on summer fallow now by using technology. I don't have to rely on just one mode. All of a sudden, the cost becomes cheaper on all the different modes, all the tools that we have available to us. Post-harvest weed control, this is a piece I really like this technology. I want every farmer to use this post-harvest. Y'all have a weed or two out that is hanging around. Finish it off, don't let it go to seed. The seed is everything. How do you limit these things from going to seed? A farmer, on most situations, isn't gonna have a population that he can afford to put a herbicide on it. I'm using 44 ounces of paraquat, I put on 5.8. Here's 44 ounces broadcast, 3.6, 5.9, 1.8 ounces. Cost me 70 cents an acre, $2.28, $1.38, and $2.31. 87% reduction, 92%, 87%, and 96% reduction. I only sprayed 4% of this field. And I have 0 weeds out there. There's no way it would warrant a broadcast application in this situation. But it's all about fighting the seed bank, the numbers, and getting them down. So that bumps me to my next project. This is set up in the middle of it. The current is a cover crop research project, and we have cows in it. I'm gonna put a song in your guys' ear that you can sing all day long. Everyone remembers that song, "Everything is better with cows around"? Type it in your phone, go ahead. Type it in, get it going. Everything's better with cows around. So we're gonna talk about this one, the cover crop research that we have going on. And I start with this with cover crops. Caution. Wheat streak mosaic virus, vectored by the wheat curl mite. Cover crops can be a good host for this. This is devastating in a wheat system. I've been out on the last 3 years on wheat curl mites in wheat. And it can take a 60 bushel yield down to 6 bushel in a heartbeat. I've been with WSU for 26 years. The previous 23 years, how many times have I got called out to look at wheat curl mite and wheat streak mosaic virus? Take a guess.
1, twice.
Take another guess.
0.
0. I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. What the heck I was looking at. And it came from people doing some intercropping, winter wheat, corn and millet and fava beans and sunflowers all seeded together. And then this one, blackleg. If you're using any of the brassica species in a cover crop mix, please, please, please make sure it's blackleg certified. If we get a blackleg in our canola system here, it'll be devastating. We've got to keep this out. And by bringing in some of these unprotected seeds, is probably one of the biggest threats that we're going to have to get blackleg into our area. So if you know of anyone utilizing cover crops or anything else, make sure it's blackleg certified or blackleg free certified. And then this one, we got this thing protecting them for auto setting, but it's Palmer amaranth. This is a weed we haven't had in Washington. It's one we don't want in Washington. See how tall it is? She's not short either. Spokane County last year, near Valley Ford, around 100 to 150 plants were found growing on a non-irrigated field that was seeded with a contaminated mix of sorghum and millet. Seed source was from Nebraska. The cool thing about this population that they brought in, it's already glyphosate resistant. We didn't have to develop that here. That was, it just came that way. So that was a good thing. We didn't have to take the time to develop it. It was already there. So be careful. If you're bringing these things in, what you think is doing good, you could be taking 1 step forward and 3 steps back. In this particular situation, if this thing gets going, this is one weed we do not want. We got enough problems without this one. And the other one, anyone here from Walla Walla? Woo! Yeah, yeah, Walla Walla, the other one, near Burbank. Luckily, this weed person was driving by and noticed it along the road. They move on cars too. And stuff. So with cover crops, I'm always gonna start with the cautions. That wheat curl mite, the thing that stinks with that is you put it on your farm. You have your cover crop mix here and everything else that gets the wheat curl mite. It's a mite, it's mobile. It gets to the neighbor's ground. The neighbor gets really mad at you, by the way. They get really mad and start talking lawyers and things like that. So it's an unpleasant situation to be in. I showed cows, everything's better with cows in it. Be careful with cows. They're one of the greatest transporters of weeds. We brought cows to the Wilkie farm. I kind of joked about it, about giving those cows a juice cleanse before they showed up on the farm. I have to quickly about it. I don't want the weeds that may be transported in a cow coming onto the farm. You can see here, especially between regions, those things do a wonderful job. The cow chow study, I'm gonna jump through this. If you have any questions about cow chow, we can jump into it a lot more. We quit calling it cover crop, we call it multi-function crop, because we're not using it as a cover crop, it's really forage. We're producing a forage crop, not a cover crop. So we have no-till fallow, multi-function crop, fallow, multi-function crop, and fallow. We have a randomized complete block design. We use sunflower, peas, forage, barley, turnips, and millet. And then we had it growing. And then in September, we turned 9 steers loose in this for 5 days. And there for 5 days on 0.65 acres of the multi-species crop, and then 0.48 acres of this CRP grassy patch for roughage. They did gain 3 pounds a day when they left. So that was a good thing. They did gain weight, they didn't maintain weight, and they didn't lose weight. They actually gained weight. So we came in, I call it the best we could do for our mob grazing. We're collecting a lot of data on it, don't worry. Oh. Back up, back up. That far, doesn't like this picture. They actually pulled the turnips out of the ground and chewed on the turnips. Wasn't their first choice, but when they came back around, that was their second choice. They'll rip them right out of the ground and chomp away on them. And this is what it kind of looks like when they left. You can see we had the fences out there, the cover crop mix, multifunction crop, fallow. And then that was on September 16th, when the cows left. September 19th, we removed the fences, ran the drill right over the top of them. And got winter wheat seeded. And that's what it looks like. You can see winter wheat coming up here in the fallow and multi-function crop there. And looking across it, we do have wheat growing. You can see there is rows in the multi-function. Oh,
Do
yeah.
you use a hoe drill or a disc?
We use the John Deere 750 disc drill.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. And we just see it right across it. One of the reasons farmers, if we take a significant beating on our winter wheat yield, they're less likely to adopt anything like this. They just, whether it's true or not, and it is a lot of truth, we can't take a hit on our winter wheat yields. So if I can do something to maintain or enhance our winter wheat yields, that's what I'm really looking to do. Just a side note on the economics, the cover crop mixture costs us $60 an acre. For any farmer to hop in his tractor, pull in a no-till drill, turn the key, and seed an acre is $25 to $35. So 67. 85, 90 bucks and just tied up in a cover crop mix. So that's a lot of money tied up on it. How do we gain that back with the cows? Can we get it back in some winter wheat yield? Or at least not hurt our winter wheat yield? That's what we're trying to look at and what we're trying to work into it. The weed control, actually this is gonna have more downy brome in it than this one. Why? Because my best herbicide is a good competitive crop. This one already has a jump on this one. So the weed control is gonna be a little bit more difficult where we had that multi-function crop in initially. We'll see if that changes over time. The other study we have is we have peas growing and triticale. And this one's a little bit different. In a normal 3-year crop rotation at the Wilkie farm, we have actively growing roots on the ground 44% of the time. When we go summer fallow, winter wheat, spring cereal, we have actively growing roots on the ground 44% of the time. We're trying to use a cover crop mixture into our summer fallow. We're coming in after the spring wheat, seeding the cover crop, overwintering it, and taking it out at the end of May. So instantly, we put 8 months of growing roots out there. We go from 44% of the time, we bump it up to 67% of the time. With that, we have actively growing roots across the rotation, not the crop, the whole rotation. So we're trying to get more actively growing roots out onto the ground. And we randomized complete box design. This is what we're looking at. And so we have no-till fallow, that's our check. Winter triticale, winter bee triticale mix, trying to keep the seed cost down. And find something that's gonna actively grow. And then we seed winter wheat right over the top of it. And once again, we don't wanna do harm to that winter wheat crop. So this is just a look at how it goes, planted, terminated, and then we harvest it. And when we have this going on in 3 different fields, and we're keeping it rotating through as we move forward. People always ask, what type of information are you using to terminate that? What soil moisture are you looking at or anything else? It's crop insurance dates. Actually, we kind of goofed up because you has to be terminated by June 31st to ensure that wheat as winter wheat on fallow. If it's terminated after May 31st, it has to be insured as continuous crop wheat, which is less coverage. That's what a grower would make that decision. I also make that decision on downy brome. I'm not gonna let my downy brome, because I get downy brome in this, I'm not gonna let it go to seed. So that's what I use for termination, it has nothing else, no other science behind it besides those 2 things. We remove some of the cover because Pacific Northwest National Laboratories is paying for this. They want the biomass. They want to see if they can help enhance our cover crop stuff and then pay for the biomass. Trying to find something to generate revenue to help pay for the cost. Someone always asks me about what type of data you're collecting on this. I'll go through the data right now. We have a lot of data being collected on this. Don't worry about that. The spreadsheets are enormous with the data on nutrients, water, but I break it down as this one. Only 1 year of harvest so far. The winter wheats are overall down. It wasn't the best location, but the check, the peas, the triticale, and the mix, the only one that was significantly less was the mix. Was less than where you use peas or triticale. It's kind of false because we don't have much for peas there. The peas are they're gonna be replaced. We don't have enough biomass for peas to biomass up. But you can see what we've got for yield, and we want to keep this going, and hopefully these will always be equal to or better than the check. If I want any potential for a grower to adopt something like this.
What are you gonna replace the peas with?
I think we're gonna use fava beans. And hopefully we can get more growth. I thought winter peas would give us more opportunities, but they got hammered again this year by frost. They were just dinky and miserable and sick looking. They were mad at me. So conclusions, it says we are not playing with house money. We're playing with farmers' money with this. And that's both short-term and long-term. And it's definitely balancing it. And not only playing with farmers' money, you're playing with landlords' money. And things like that when you're going to look at things like this. But herbicide resistant weeds is greatly gonna impact the money situation. I don't know where I'm at per time, I lost it on my.
You've got, there's 20 minutes left,
Oh,
so
okay.
you
So
can
I'm
leave as
down to
much
my
time for
conclusion.
questions as you want, yeah.
Okay, so as I kind of want to wrap up here with conclusions, herbicide resistant weeds are the biggest threat we have to conservation tillage moving forward. I've heard it many times, not only at X, at multiple grower meetings, how are we gonna get ahead of it? Are we gonna have to bring iron back out to help solve some of these issues with the weeds? And we don't have to bring iron completely out, but we have to figure out a way to get more modes of action and diversify that cropping system even more. And this is one I harp on with farmers. I talked about earlier with the farmer, oh, there's no weeds become resistant to iron. No, weeds have become resistant to iron. Weeds don't become resistant to good management. And we have to enhance management to get ahead of the weeds, so I can continue doing the practices that we need to do on the land. And it starts with all farmers and those people who work with the farmers to have a plan. If you work with farmers, ask them about their plans, help them with their plans, show them what to do, what we can do differently, what are some other things. And the thing about a good plan is it has to be flexible as you gain new information. I have a plan for the Wilkie farm, what crops and everything else, but it all is based on management and economics moving forward, and to minimize those issues that we're dealing with. The sensors and the drone technology will be a tremendous asset moving forward. The weed hit sprayer I talked about, trying to get more modes of action. There's see and spray technology now, where you can run a sprayer. It's coming along where you can run the sprayer going down the thing, and it uses cameras and it actually identifies weeds. And then it will spray the appropriate rate for the particular weed you're dealing with. So if you're going through it, may give a Russian thistle 6 ounces, where it may give a prickly lettuce 12 ounces type deal, as the farmer runs across the ground. All it takes is time and money. Usually you can, that helps. I don't have a lot of drone technology, but farmers are using drones. I talked about the weed hit sprayer being expensive. There's companies now out there who will fly a drone over the field, it sees weeds, it maps weeds, they download it into the farmer's sprayer, and he takes off and sprays where the drone said there's weeds. That's being actively done. The cool thing is, the next drone is, that drone is also gonna see a weed and spray a weed. Autonomous tractors. Farmers would love to have instead of a 500 horse autonomous tractor, what if you put a 75 horse autonomous tractor instead of a 100-foot weed hit sprayer, if you can just put a 15-foot weed hit sprayer behind it. And you just turn that sucker loose every day. It just goes back, it spends all day and night just going back and forth. Or it may not even be herbicides, like who has a Roomba in their house? Okay, we're gonna have Roombas out there. It's got a little claw that reaches down and twists the weeds out of the ground. We're also looking at technology, it's supposed to be here, hopefully, it never gets here in time, it shanks. And like instead of turning on the sprayer when it sees the weed, has a shovel that comes down. It's a big hoe that rolls across the ground. It's gonna take that innovative technology to help keep us ahead of this curve. Oh, hold on, back up, we're not done yet. Oh, and this one, I've worked with cover crops, I've done a lot of stuff with it. I'm still trying to figure out how that's gonna help us with the herbicide resistant weeds. In some instances, where we're seeding that winter wheat later, as I mentioned, the best weed control is good competitive crop. We're not getting that early vigor out of that winter wheat, putting it into those situations. So we're gonna have prone for more downy brome in those situations than the wheat on fallow. So what are some things we can do to help overcome that? And stuff, and what can we do long term, not just in a single year, but moving forward in that particular scenario. And hopefully we don't bring more stuff on, hopefully we can solve more weed pressure with the cows than create with the cows. So with that, I'm open for any questions, comments, suggestions. If you don't, I have my cell phone with me almost all the time. Feel free to call or text, email. I'm not worried, you have like 6,324 unopened emails. But go ahead and email me. I don't think.
Awesome. Huge thank you to Aaron. We still have about 15 minutes. If anyone has any questions, as a reminder to anyone that wants pesticide credits, if you didn't sign this, you need to before you leave. Otherwise, you won't get credit.
It's too nice outside.
It is very nice.
Yeah,
Have you done any work on like corn rotation, no drill, with weed management?
using corn.
Well, just like for operations that are more like a corn, I'm thinking dairies, like corn, rye, rotations.
The question is if I use like corn, rye, or anything like that in rotation. Early on with the Wilkie farm, we looked at some short range corns in that Davenport area. We just don't have, we're only do 3 days. And when it comes to rye, if you try bringing a rye seed onto the farm, I'm gonna hurt you. That's my worst weed is farrow rye. I've spent out field 1 and 2. I have a 14-year management program to get rid of farrow rye. So I'm not a fan of farrow rye. I use triticale, but I will not use rye for that reason. But we're always looking for stuff.
I don't know if you have enough data yet, but when you were bringing in the livestock for grazing after cover crops and things like that, have you seen any differences in weeds or weed pressure with that livestock grazing, or is it still a little too early?
It's still too early. The question is, have we seen any differences where we brought the livestock in? And like I said, they were there September 10th, they left on the 16th, and we seeded it on the 19th. We've done a lot of soil, the soil scientists have done a lot of soil sampling and things like that, but it's still pretty early to do any weed assessment on it. I know those plots did have more downy brome in there from the person who did the spraying. Yeah.
Have you ever used a liquid fertilizer as a weed control?
The question is, have I ever used it for a weed, liquid fertilizer for a weed control? Not specifically. The one thing I will use liquid fertilizer for, you remember I talked about on my on coming after that heavy winter wheat crop and then using targeted tillage.
Yep.
One of the things I will do is after we mow it at 12 degrees, we will run some solution 32 and molasses on it before we do the that light disking over the top of it, to use fertilizer and molasses to help feed some of the microbial activity and stuff to help break down residue and weed seeds. Okay, that's my only focus on that. Yeah.
I know some sorghum trials are happening in Douglas County. Do you think that that would be a viable tool to help control pressure?
The question is, are we gonna be using any sorghum? There's sorghum being planted in Douglas County. And are we gonna be using any of that? Ian Burt just dropped off a bag of sorghum at the farm. I talked about the cover crop mix that we have, that we used last year. Hopefully by the end of this week, we're planting a trial with multiple, just small plots with the cover crop species mix we used last year, one that another farmer's using, and a different one that has some corn in it and sorghum with cowpea or something. Kind of all variations from what we have done, what another farmer is doing, and all ranges of cost, because we also have, I want something cheap. Some of the science says on the cover crops, you don't need these exotic mixes, you just need something growing out there. To do anything for soil health, the most important thing is to have actively growing roots. And so trying to figure out the cheapest, easiest way to get plants established and not hurt our winter. So we are looking at it. Cool. Not to harvest stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll come to you next. Yeah.
When you talked about the differences with your cover crop and your percentage, that was like 41% and 67%, are you looking at the carbon content in those?
I'm just looking at 100%, that's just my spreadsheet of when I have actively growing roots on that ground versus when I don't. You know, we think of, oh, people continuous spring wheat. We have wheat growing out there every year, spring wheat, and when you look at that, you have wheat growing in, you know, April, May, June, July, August. 5 of the 12 months. So you're not even covering that piece of ground with actively growing roots for 50% of the time. And I don't like fallow. My biggest thing with fallow is I have 13 months out there with nothing growing. Except for weeds. I don't want to use those for my cover crops. There's farmers who have worked with weeds as cover crops. They're multi-species. They got grassy weeds, they got broadleaf weeds, they got aggressive weeds, they got tap roots, they got fibrous roots. So that's just simply looking at in that 3 rotation, I only have actively growing roots. That standard rotation farmers use actively growing roots 44% of the time. By cutting down that 13 months on summer fallow down to 5 months, that greatly changes and brings it up to 67% of the time I have actively growing roots over there. And farmers will ask me, well, are they really actively growing? They're the pea plant's only this big. And I'm like, it's still a root on the ground, man. I don't know. So it's not gonna hurt per se, as long as it doesn't take up too much moisture to enhance or affect my next crop. Yeah,
So this may be a little bit off topic, but what I normally do is like spot spray things. And around like restoration sites or margins of fields. And we don't really have a good herbicide rotation plan in place, but at this scale, how worried should we be about resistance?
what was that last part?
At this scale, should we actually be worried about developing herbicide resistance and say our
Actually, some of our biggest, like the Italian ryegrass and stuff, some of our biggest places we've had where the resistance started is often in orchards, where they just run Roundup going down the trees to keep it clean. And I bet you if you start looking in people's yards and things like that, you're probably gonna find a lot of herbicide resistance because you can only use 1 or 2 products in your yard. And no homeowner who uses Roundup around stuff is gonna try to come up with something diversified. I wish they would. I wish they keep track of it and figure it out, but you know, that's part of what our Master Gardeners program focuses a little bit on, I think, is some of that. But if you're spraying just around riparian areas and stuff, it's never a bad thing to change it up. But you get in such a sense, well, I use that and I did a wonderful job. You write that recipe down, you just want to use it because it works. You don't want to change because you have to respray. And that sticks. Anything else? Thank you guys, and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you.